Good morning. It's good to be here this morning. We've got some visitors here all the way from, if I remember the way you say, Kansas City, Missouri. Traveling through, visiting. It's good to have you here. We're going to be finishing up chapter 18 of John and hopefully heading into 19. But if you guys want to talk more about the end of 18, we can do that too. So always go for those. Talk about what keeps things interested and what you want to learn about. So we'll get started with a word of prayer here in just a moment, and I'll ask in just a moment, David, Cam, if you would lead that prayer in just a moment. If I get confused during class, it's because when I do the sermon as well, I sometimes mix up the sermon, what I'm going to say, with the class, what I'm going to say. So I'll try not to get too confused there. I'll just look at Steve, and he'll keep me online, I'm sure. Okay. So let's get started with a word of prayer.
Lord, thank you for helping us to continue to worship you and to learn your word. Allow us to be able to implement it in our lives, be able to be with us as we move forward through any difficulties. Allow us to also be thankful in the good times as well as the bad, and to continue to help others as they see that they need, and to continue to be there for each other, and to continue to worship you properly. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay, so we're in John 18, and what's happening? Who can recap for me? Ann? The arrest. Jesus is arrested, and he was brought before. What happened at the arrest? Peter is going to be that action hero. And lopped off the ear, and Jesus just, okay, this is not what we're here for. Let's heal that. That's not what's important right now. But he was not taken to, you're on the right track, not taken to Ananias, he was taken to Annas, and then to Caiaphas, and after those, according to Jewish law and custom, after those illegal trials in the middle of the night, eventually he was taken to Pilate. So we're in the middle of John 18, around verse 10 and 11, that's where Peter does the thing with the sword and Jesus heals him. And so verse 12 says, so the band of soldiers and their captain and officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. First they led him to Annas, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. It was Caiaphas who had advised the Jews it would be expedient that one man should die for the people. And so that's about where we left it. So, quick question. Previewing what's going to be coming up, who first asked Peter if he was a disciple of Jesus? Servant girl, very good. Servant girl. Another question as we sort of preview of chapter 19, end of 18 and 19. How many times does Pilate say, I find no guilt in him? 3. Very good. Oh, the arrow's off. It's 3. According to that, it should be about 2.8 times. Yeah. So as we go through this, we're going to look at it. One of the things to just notice is how much does Pilate just try to do away with the whole thing. Does Pilate really want to make it happen? No. He's going, this is an annoyance. But the things of mob rule are going to start coming up. So in John 18, we see he's first taken to Annas, then to Caiaphas. But what we're going to be reading of some of these questions were Jesus' question and the denials of Peter first start. He hasn't gone to Caiaphas yet. It's all first with Annas. Brian, is that a hand up or?
No.
Okay. That's how I get some people to do it. Yeah, they scratch their head. Oh, I'm going to call on them. They haven't talked for a while. So we're going to be seeing that. And we see in verses 15 and 16 that 2 disciples follow Jesus. 2 disciples follow Jesus. Jeff, could you read that for me, 15 and 16? Jeff. Oh, he was in a different place.
Or thinking about your lesson or
Something.
something.
18, 15, 16. Catch the students unaware. Huh?
Peter was following Jesus, and so was another disciple. Now the disciple was known to the high priest and entered with Jesus into the court of the high priest. But Peter, standing at the door outside, so the other disciple who was known to the high priest went out and spoke to the doorkeeper, brought in Peter.
All right. So we have Peter and the other disciple. Who is it?
I researched it.
All right.
Some will say John, but that's not definitive because this person had to know the high priest. And John was a fisherman. Would he have gone in the same circles as Annas, the high priest? So there was that 2 sides.
Well, and there is that. Yeah, John was a fisherman. If you look at it, there's all sorts of theories out there. All sorts of theories out there. I'm going to put to you, we had Peter, and I'm going to put to you that other disciple was John. Let's take a look at chapter 20, verse 2. The other disciple, as it's called. Just to lend a little bit of credence, scriptural credence to it's John. Jumping ahead, chapter 20, verse 2, it's talking about this is the resurrection, right? This is the resurrection. Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark and had taken away a tomb. She ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, that's this. It's starting, okay. It's starting, the other apostle. The other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved and said to them. So this reference to the other disciple here is also referenced as being the one whom Jesus loved, and we know that is John.
I was going to say, John does this. He speaks, because he speaks in third person. When it comes to his actions, it's often third person. So.
Often speaks of himself in the third person. So John, the other beloved disciple, and again, there was, as I looked it up and did some research, there's all sorts of theories out there. Nothing that can be tied down. If you want a little bit of entertainment, you might research them and read on them. Not that it's important, right? It doesn't make really a bit of difference here. One theory was that relates to the Marys. When the Marys are at the feet of Jesus on the cross, and he looks to his mother and John, he says, "Behold," right? Mary, his Jesus' physical mother. "Behold thy son," and does that. That one of those Marys and the connection of John's mother then to the mother of John the Baptist, possibly, of which John the Baptist's parents were of Levitical origin, which tied them to the priesthood, which then could have been. I mean, it's a stretch. Is it important? Not really. It's sort of interesting to look up. Well, he worked up there. We don't know where he was born. He was considered to be Galilean because of being where he was, but he could have been of the, we don't know what tribe, right? Could he have been of the Levitical tribe and possibly connected somehow? It's hard to say.
Whoever it was, it helped with God's plan for
Mhm.
Peter to be in a place where he needed to be at this important time.
Exactly. It's all part of God's plan. And I would, again, because of John 22, 20, verse 2, not John 22. There is no John 22. The fact that John, as the beloved disciple, was always there. He was usually always there next to Jesus, always very close, always very close. I would say, in my mind, it's pretty certain that it's that, but can I say definitively 100%? No, but it's,
You need to remember that the chapters and verses were put in by man,
Yeah.
not here. So it's one letter. And so if he referred to himself as,
the other disciple here and also later.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would be the same person.
Most likely.
Speculative.
Most likely.
Still speculative.
So, as Jeff read, John goes in, and Peter stops at the door because he's not known. The other disciple goes in, that I'm thinking is John. And what did it say there? He went out and spoke to the servant girl. So there's this girl at the door to this courtyard of Annis's compound, home, whatever. And John goes and he goes in, he looks right. I can picture he goes in following because he's known as Peter stops and, where's Peter? Oh. Come on, Peter. Like they were together. Again, speculative, but that's what we know sort of happened. Peter stood outside at the door, so the other disciple, who was known the high priest, went out, spoke to the servant girl, and said, okay, he's okay. He can come in. He's with me. All right? And what does that girl do? Verse 17. She's the doorkeeper, but what does she say as John's bringing Peter in? She asks a question. Aren't you one of them? Aren't you one of them? And we have that. Peter's brought in by John, and we have this first denial there in verse 17. The servant girl at the door said to Peter, "You are also not one of the man's disciples, are you?" Now, with all that Peter's done, is this surprising that he says, "I am not"? Yeah.
Not only is it weird, but why now? And why to her? Why is this the moment about this girl asking him that he decides now is the time to deny? It's not like she's some higher up who's really uber important.
Mhm.
Why her and why now?
And isn't that how Satan tries to get at us? Where we least expect it from? It's some little thing, you'd be, I'm doing really good, serving God, really good. Then all of a sudden something from your blind spot comes at you and you get tripped up.
It almost seems like it's a little white lie. It's like, well, you're not one of his disciples, are you? Oh, no. Just wait to get in. He just lies in way in.
Well, whether it's little or big, it's still
It's still a lie.
still the same effect. Now, as to why, is Peter confused? Yeah, Peter's real confused right now. Less than a week ago, less than 7 days ago, they had the triumphal entry, and what were the disciples thinking? The king is coming. Here's the time. And then all this talk in the upper room of sacrifice and having to be killed and delivered over, and they're confused. And John, Judas betrays them, and Peter's, let's defend the Lord. And Jesus goes, no, stop. Heals them. He's got to be confused.
Or you kind of just went where I was going to go. You were talking about less than a week ago, less than a couple of hours ago. He had just taken the sword and tried to kill Malchus.
You would have thought, if he's going to deny him, that would have been the place.
But now, it's just a few hours later, now he's denying, and it's very surprising, because earlier he's, trying to fight with a sword.
What's the scripture say? Take heed when you think you stand. lest you fall.
I always think it was a really shocking moment for Peter when Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan."
He went from the high of upon this rock, that confession, to get behind in 3 seconds. Sometimes I wonder if Peter was a little bit bipolar. But
Me too.
But he says, I am not. And he goes in. Now the servants and the officers had made coal fire because it was cold, and they were standing and warming themselves, and Peter also was with them and warming himself. And we shift from Peter around the fire to Jesus with Annas in the coming verses. He's questioned by Annas in verses 19 through 24. Can I get a volunteer to read those verses 19 through 24? Brian?
Okay. Picking up verse number 19. The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Jesus answered him, I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple, where all the Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. They know what I said. And when he had said these things, one of the officers standing by struck Jesus with his hand, saying, Is that how you answer the high priest? Jesus answered him, If what I said is wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said is right, why do you strike me? Annas then sent him bound to Caiaphas the high priest.
Well, that's where we know this is being done with Annas previously. And as we talked about, it says the high priest didn't question him. This was even though Annas wasn't the current high priest, he had been high priest, so he still had that honorary title as a retired Supreme Court judge would still be called, or a former president still called, president and so forth. And it says he questioned Jesus, so there's obviously other things that were said about his disciples and his teaching. And Jesus is going, what's this response? What's Jesus' response? Summarize it.
Hasn't been done in the closet.
The temple's probably not that far away, right? Annas would probably have his home fairly close to it, along with Caiaphas. And he says, I've been doing what? All this teaching, I've been doing it in the temple. Everybody's heard me. I haven't done it in secret. I'm not hiding it. This is not a conspiracy. You know what my teachings are, basically, isn't it? And then one of the officers, thinking that Jesus is being disrespectful to Annas, right, smacks him. So is Jesus, although we're going to see before Pilate, Jesus is quiet regarding some accusations, is Jesus accepting the accusations? No, he's saying, I've been doing this teaching. Why are you still asking me? Why are you hitting me if I've done anything? Have I done anything wrong? Then why are you hitting me? But you can tell it's done. It's still done in a sort of no tone. It seems it's being done with still a tone of respect for the situation and not of high emotion, as calm. And so Annas is going to send Jesus bound to the priest. Exit back now, out from that scene. While that's happening, verse 25, we have the second and third denials. We're going to go to Luke and see a little bit more about this. It says, now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself, so they said to him, who was they? Yeah, so go back. It's the servants and officers, back up in verse 18. All right, they were warming themselves. we have this dual thing like you might see in a TV show, going inside, outside, that sort of thing. And so he's saying to himself, they go, you're one of those disciples, aren't you? You also are not one of his disciples, are you? Now he's feeling the pressure now, right? Because he sees Jesus on trial, right? And now who's Peter fearful for? He's fearful for himself. And he says, I am not. And one of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, so a relative of Malchus, asked, did I not see you in the garden with him? Didn't I see you out there? And Peter once again denies it, and the rooster crows. The 3 denials. Let's turn to Luke. Luke has a little bit more detail. Chapter 22, beginning verse 56. Same situation. Luke gives a little bit more detail. The servant girl, seeing him as he sat in the light and looking closely at him, said, this man was also with him. But he denied it, saying, woman, I do not know him. And a little later, someone else saw him and said, you are also one of them. But Peter said, man, I am not. And after about an interval of an hour, still another insisted, certainly this man was with him too, for he is a Galilean. So you get a little bit more detail about what was said, some of the other things that were said. And he says, man, I do not know what you are talking about. And immediately, while he was still speaking, man, did you know what you're talking about? During that last word, immediately, the rooster crowed. This next one, the setup had to have been, of course, many times they didn't have doors that closed and so forth. Peter was in the courtyard, warming himself around the fire. Jesus was inside another room, but there was obviously here a line of sight as to what was going on. And what does it say? And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. I many times have tried to imagine what kind of look that must have been. Maybe perhaps it's the kind of look that when we raising kids, you look at your child and you warn them about something and they do it, and then you look at them and they're going, and they know that I've caught you. I told you, look. Whatever that look was, what Jesus looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, how he had said to him, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And what does Peter do? Well, he runs out and weeps bitterly. Does Peter understand what he's just done? It must have been crushing. Just crushing to Peter's soul and spirit.
One, we throw a lot of shade Peter's way, but it shows, as you said earlier, how Satan can disguise things in the heat of a moment.
Mm-hmm.
It could have felt much less like denying of Jesus, and when you realize what's happening right now, I mean, it's a hustle and bustle of a bad moment in which things are not going the legal way. So imagine you had, people posing as police officers kick your door down at 2 o'clock in the morning and drag you out without reading your rights and start asking you questions. Your brain knows, well, no, I should wait for a lawyer to be here. I don't have to speak to them. But in the moment, you're trying to make sure, I don't know if these are even officers. This is not how this is supposed to go. I don't want to die right now, so I will say whatever it takes to keep these people from killing me. And so everything about what's going on with Jesus right now is not going the way it's supposed to legally be going. And so it's very easy just to, no, I'll sort this all out in the daylight when things calm down.
Yeah. But what did Peter say when Jesus told him that he would deny him that very night 3 times before the rooster crowed, what did Peter say?
I have to die for you, with you.
Oh, I would never. I would die for you. Which he backed up a little bit when he pulled the sword to defend Jesus. That time when Jesus said, what? Enough, stop. And healed the servant's ear. We're not told, but that must have had a shocking effect on Peter. Wait a second, you're going to let them take you? Did Peter know? And we know from other scriptures with that physical altercation, and Jesus stopped them. What else did Jesus tell Peter and the disciples? Live by the sword, and if this was physical, what? I could summon legions of angels. In other words, Jesus is finally trying to get through to their thick heads, of which we would be part of that. We are thick-headed people. But it's not physical. Right? It's not physical. And Peter was still focused on the physical. What's going on? I don't get it. I could have caught. It's not about conquering physically. And they didn't get it. So we know Peter ran out and wept bitterly. And later, I don't think John, if I remember correctly, doesn't get to it. What is after the resurrection? What does Jesus come back to and do for Peter? Ask him 3 times if he loved him. 3 denials, 3 affirmations, and that was that Jesus was going, Peter, do you agape me? And Peter keeps responding, Lord, I phileo you. Is Peter still feeling guilty? Is Peter still having doubts at that time as to how can I about himself and his dedication to Jesus, and he does that. Jesus does it 3 times, and the 3rd time Jesus uses the word phileo, the brotherly love, and Peter has a little bit of doubt. But every time did Jesus kick Peter out? No. What did Jesus do? Feed my sheep. Basically, it's what? If you love me, get back up. Go feed my sheep. Go do what I've picked you to do. And does Peter do that? Yes, he does. So what lesson is that for us? When we fail and we stumble and we fall, get back up and work. Was Peter repentant? Yes. Yeah, he showed that. Went out and wept bitterly. Still wasn't sure he was worthy to serve Christ and love him in that exchange. But Jesus still what? Come on, Peter. Feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. That's your job. I saw a hand.
Jesus gives us a gift every Sunday. And Peter doesn't, the crow doesn't remind him. Jesus looks at the house and he remembers. And we get to look at the Lord's Supper and look to Jesus and remember.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that forgiveness.
When Jesus established, very good. When Jesus established the Lord's Supper, what did he say? Do this in remembrance of me. Remember.
A lot of this in our lives too is how do we respond once we fail the Lord? If you look back at what Judas did was no more, bad than what Peter did. Peter denies him 3 times. Jesus betrays him once. It's just how they both reacted. Judas went out and was, sorry for what happened and just committed suicide. Peter was remorseful and, comes back, but he
Mm-hmm.
committed suicide. So for us, it's when you fail the Lord, do you just give up? We can't. We've got to get back up.
It's not a matter of if we're going to fail.
It's when.
It's when. And it's what you do after that. So after Peter's denial, it said they led Jesus in verse 28. Led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters, which is Pilate. It was early morning, and they themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so they would not be defiled. They waited outside. But we can't go in a Gentile's house. It might defile us. It's okay to hold illegal trials through the night for someone that we really don't like or and want to get rid of, but hey, we can't go into that Gentile's house. And so Jesus is brought inside to be questioned. So Pilate went outside of them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" Pilate's response is like, "Has this happened before?" I don't know. Have the Jews brought to the doorstep of Pilate other people? Because he comes out like this has happened before, it seems like. And they answered him, "If this man were not doing evil, we had not delivered him over to you." And Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." And the Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death." Ooh, really? Which law are they quoting there? Roman law. Did God's law say they could put someone to death? All right. If someone blasphemes God, what was the punishment? Death, stoning. When they brought the woman caught in adultery,
They should have both been there.
but they were trying to what? Get Jesus to condemn, so that as far as stone, give her stoning. And Jesus' response was, after a period of time, was what? He's without sin, cast the first stone. Were they more than willing to put somebody to death? Yes. But here, and this sort of shows the Jewish leadership mindset. They were so dead set against Jesus, they're using the excuse of Roman law rather than take the responsibility on themselves. And verse 32 says, "This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken to show by what kind of death he was going to die." So because we know, what kind of death does Jesus have? Crucifixion up on the cursed tree, right? And that's prophesied in the Old Testament. If the Jews had just taken him out to put him to death, what would they have done? They would have stoned him. So this is fulfilling prophecy. Does it make it okay? Does that, could they before the judgment seat, well, we're just fulfilling your prophecy? No, that's not going to cut it.
Hey, Brad,
Yeah.
one thing you were talking about Pilate's response, if I remember studying on history, is Pilate had been warned by Caesar, just knock off messing with the Jews, stop causing trouble. So he's he's on this edge. Nobody liked going there. Any of the rulers, as far as
The Jews were trouble.
And so he's got this, and he's been warned, don't mess up. Now the Jews all show up with a bunch of crowd. It's like, I got to get out front of this. Take him, figure it out yourselves.
Yeah. I don't want to really deal with you guys. Exactly. And so Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him. So Pilate goes back into his whatever headquarters building, whatever this was, brings Jesus in and starts questioning. And the first question we have recorded, what's Pilate's first question that we have recorded? Are you the king of the Jews? What has been throughout the Gospel of John, what's been one of the main questions that gets asked all the time? Who is Jesus? Who is this man? And here at the end, before Pilate, we get the same question. Isn't that true, right? Isn't that this question, are you the king of Jews? Who are you, Jesus? Pilate wants to know, who are you that caused, from Pilate's perspective, what? You got all the Jews are in this uproar over you. Who are you? Does Pilate have an idea of who Jesus is? Because everything that Jesus has done has not been hidden. Would Pilate know of at least some of the things that happened? Yeah. It's not been done in a corner. Jesus answers, do you say this on your own accord, or did others say it to you about me? Pilate answered, am I a Jew? Your own nation and chief priests deliver you over to me. What have you done? You must be guilty. You've riled up such a crowd. But again, it's this primary, who is Jesus? And isn't that what we have to answer in our hearts? Who is Jesus? Now, and Pilate's thinking physical, as many of the people there did. Are you the king of the Jews? Is Jesus a king? Yes. Just of the Jews? No. So Pilate asks, what have you done? And he begins with, my kingdom. What did Jesus just answer Pilate's question with?
I have a king.
Yes, I am a king. Or I'm going to be a king. Very soon. And this is one I know I have to come back and refresh my time, because in our times of society and culture and people attacking biblical values, godly values, and politics and wars in foreign countries and different things, is it easy to get caught up in the physical? Oh, it wasn't me. What's going to happen? Am I going to, what after, and what about this war? And but if we come back to this, the sermon this morning is going to be called Looking to Jesus. This is right here. This is looking to Jesus. He says, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting. What did Peter try to do? Fight. And Jesus told him, stop. That I might not be delivered over to the Jews. And indeed, if it was a physical kingdom of this world, Jesus had already said up there when they were trying to arrest, to the disciples when they were trying to arrest him, if it was, I could call legions of angels and it would be done. Because we know how much power did one angel have, as we've seen in the Old Testament. Right? Wiping out one to wipe out whole armies. But my kingdom is not of this world. I believe it's in Ephesians. What is it? We fight not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and powers and authorities in this spiritual realm. It's not our fight. And I think I've heard Steve mention this, and it's so true. Back at the beginning of this country in the 1750s, 60s, and 70s, as God-believing men that they were, if they were truly Christians, would they have rebelled against the King of England? Because that wasn't, his kingdom is not of this world. It's so easy to get caught up to, oh, that guy cut me off on the freeway. This happened. Let it go. What's the Disney song? Let it go. It's not of this world. Then Pilate said to him, so you are a king. He's trying to get Jesus to say the words. Because then what's the issue? If Jesus says, I am a king, then what recourse does Pilate have? Oh, it can't have any other king but Caesar, as the Jews claim a little bit later. And Jesus answered, you say that I am a king. You say that I am a king. Okay. For this purpose I was born, that he is a king. Well, let's see what it says. It's not that he wasn't born into this world to be That wasn't the purpose. What's the purpose? For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come in the world, here it is, to what? To bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. And Pilate then pulls one of the ultimate great escape lines of all time, and it says, "What is truth?" When I was getting my bachelor's degree, I took what's called an interdisciplinary course at William University, Ethics in the American Tradition, taught by an economist, a historian, and a, quote, religious professor. I don't remember much of that course except for one day the religious professor got up there and said, "There is no truth." I've gone, "Excuse me?" Hold on a second. That he would have the gall to stand up there and say that. And so closing out 18, we'll get to 19 next week. And so when he said this, here's the first one. He went back outside and told to the Jews and told him, "I find no guilt in him." Nothing to kill him over. "But you have a custom that I should release to you one man at the Passover. So do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews?" And they cried out again, "Not this man, but Barabbas." And Barabbas was a robber. Shows you what they thought of Jesus.
I was confused by that because when you look at other versions, he was an insurrectionist. That's a person that did want to take over the government. And he could have died for the people, the one person who died for the people. And they chose Jesus.
Which again shows the Jews' thought process. What were the Jewish leadership wanting? What did they think of the prophecies about the kingdom, David's throne and all that? That we would return to the time of the kingdom of David and Solomon. It would be glorious in this physical and throw off. And that's not who Jesus was. At least they didn't see him as that. So we're going to wrap this up. We're going to see, they have this call for crucifixion now. Steve?
One thing through this that helps my belief in Jesus even more is standing before the guy that did have immediate, do anything he wanted to. The Jews already wanted to kill him. And any one of us standing there, could we even said a word? But it's all perfect. Exactly. Like he said, if he'd said, "I am king," then Pilate would have freed him. And he wouldn't feel bad about it. He could tell Caesar, "Hey, he tried to take over your job." But instead, he still left it in a way that Pilate had no
Vague
idea
enough,
what
yeah.
to do. And so it's just showing God in human form, being able to know exactly what to say. So it's just, everybody else could have done this.
As James says about the taming of the tongue, if someone completely tames their tongue, they're going to be perfect in just about everything they do. Well, unfortunately, we're not. So that's 18. We'll pick up 19 here. The final times that Pilate tries to calm everybody down, and I have to do this a couple more times. And then we get into the crucifixion. Thank you.